Good afternoon and welcome to the Barefoot Bay Recreation District Board of Trustees regular meeting on May 10, 2019 at 1 p.m. at D&E. As we do before each Board of Trustees meeting, we have a moment of silence for all our service military personnel, past and present, who have or are still fighting to protect this great country that we live in. We will follow this with the Pledge of Allegiance flag led by Mr. Diana. Let's have a moment of silence, please. Thank you for coming, and please turn off all cell phones. Mr. Diana, would you have the pleasure of doing the roll call?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Trustee Leveland, are you here?
I am.
Trustee Henderson, are you here?
I am.
Trustee Wheaton, are you here? Trustee Kloski, are you here?
Yes.
Also present is Trustee Diana. Also in attendance with us today, Mr. Chairman, we have our General Counsel, Cliff Reppinger, Dawn Myers, our District Clerk, John Coffey, our District Manager, Jason Pierman from SDS, our management company. Matt Getz was here from Property Services. There he is in the back of the room. Kathy Mendez from Food and Beverage just entered. I think that's the Rich Armington, also from DOR and Resident Relations and HR and any other initials we can throw at the end of his name is here. We do have a quorum, Mr. Chairman. We're open for business.
Thank you, Mr. Diana. The first thing on the list is the presentation, or proclamation, Memorial Day proclamation. Would the board like to stand, come up to the podium? Dawn. Barefoot Bay Recreation District Memorial Day Proclamation. Whereas Memorial Day is a solemn day of remembrance for the brave and honorable servicemen and women who died protecting liberty in wars on American soil and overseas. And whereas we remember the fallen, we also remember the atrocities of wars and its painful aftermath on the survivors who remain to rebuild a life when many have lost the very center of their lives in bloody combat. And whereas the importance of visiting national graves and monuments, the sincere pride shown by holding parades, and the simple joy of precious families gathering help us concentrate this day as it was intended to. And whereas through our humble efforts to transfer our main streets, public halls, parks, and backyards into a hollow ground in honor of the servicemen and women who were mortally wounded but who now transcend the battlefields into the immortal realm where they remain heroes in our hearts forever, may never be enough. Let us never forget why our forefathers, through resolutions, issued a proclamation calling on the people of the United States to observe each Memorial Day as a day of prayer for permanent peace, and designating a period on that day when the people of the United States might unite in prayer. And whereas at precisely 3 p.m. local time, the entire nation participated in a moment of silence in prayer and remembrance of these brave men and women Now be resolved by the Board of Trustees of the Barefoot Bay Recreation District that Monday, May 27, 2018 is proclaimed Memorial Day, and the Board of Trustees, along with all residents of Barefoot Bay, will remember those servicemen and women who gave their lives so we could live free by lowering the flag at half sunrise to half staff until the noon hour, then raising to full staff the remainder of the day, and by participating in the Barefoot Bay Memorial Day Parade and ceremonies in solemn remembrance of those war heroes who died for this great country. Passed and adopted by the Board of Trustees, Barefoot Bay Recreation District, this 10th day of May, 2019. Hold it back. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Board of Trustees. I'm Jeff Grunow, the commander of the American Legion Post here at Barefoot Bay, and want to express our gratitude for all the support the board has given us and the support that John Coffey has given us in our various events. As some of you have heard me say, I work over at the Veteran Service Office, and we get at least 2 to 3 people every day coming into the Veteran Service Office looking for help, all different kind of things, and it's gratifying to see that the Vietnam vets are starting to come and ask for some help. But the last thing I'd like to leave you guys with, both in the audience and on TV, is Monday, May 27th, is Memorial Day. We will have the traditional parade at 10:30 starting at the tennis courts. If you got a golf cart, got nothing to do, decorate that bad boy and come on out at about 10:15. We're going to work our way up to the monument, and after the success we had last year, we're going to have the Memorial Day service inside Building A with chairs, and we have quite a program for you. So Memorial Day, 10:30, short little parade. 11 o'clock is going to be the service inside. 12 o'clock, the flags go back up to full staff. 3 o'clock, a moment of remembrance. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
we should probably have a formal motion to
Okay.
adopt the resolution. I make that motion.
I need a second. Luann, second. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the approval of minutes for April 23rd, 2019. Need a motion to approve? Mr. Logan made a
Second.
motion, second by Mr. Diana. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Mr. Loveland would be so kind as to do the treasury report.
Yes, and our cash balances in the general fund as of May 2nd, 2019, we have $2,500. Operating cash in banks, MB&T operating account, $2,681,241.05. Our interest-bearing accounts, SB&A reserve account, is $683,498.06 for a total cash balances in our general fund of $3,367,239.11. Total daily deposits and assessments received between 4/17 and 5/2 of 2019, $125,199. Expenditures over $5,000. Health First plans, $25,399.04. Special District Services, $13,093.17. Civic Plus, $5,750. Florida Power and Light, $5,640.05. Rossway, Swan, Tierney, Barry et al., $6,575.26. Special District Services, $13,195.34. United States Treasury for payroll ending 4/14, $18,600.76. Paychecks for pay period for 4/14, $63,638.21. U.S. Treasury for pay period 4/28, $18,155.24. Paychecks for pay period ending 4/28, $63,379.01. Total expenditures over $5,000, $233,426.08. Mr. Chairman, that's your report.
Need a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to accept the treasurer's report.
Second? All in favor?
Mr. Chairman, if I
Yes.
could just interrupt for a moment. If any of you are looking out in the audience and see some confusion, Trustee Loveland was reading the correct treasurer's report. We inadvertently had a wrong one listed in the packet that was up on the screen. So I just wanted to make that clarification.
Okay, thank you. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
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 Motion passes. Audience participation, we have two. One, Jim DiGiuliano. Jim? State your name and address.
I'm Jim DiGiuliano, 617 Periwinkle Circle. Reason I'm here is I bought the property next to me, 615 Periwinkle, which was a boarded up eyesore where the bay was mowing and stuff. I purchased the property and I had the house tore down. And since then, I have combined the two properties as one piece of property. And I guess I'm here because I'm asking the board if you would refund my second membership dues, because I only need one membership for one piece of property. So, does that sound right to you, or you understand where I'm going?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
John, what have we done in the past?
Normally, this is administratively done if the property owner brings in proof and we verify they built a structure across the two properties, we cut the check. I'm not exactly sure of the specifics of this case, but if there's a structure across the property lines, we can process a check for this.
Okay. Is there a structure across the property line?
Not yet. I'm in the process of building a garage, and everything seems to move very slow down here. So, so I'm going to get the permits. I've got everything else done, and sometime this summer there will be a garage built.
So if I'm understanding correctly, then after the garage is built
After
and
that,
it's
yes, then you
attached,
can,
then we
Okay.
can,
And then who would I talk to then?
If you come to the administration bill and ask for Charles Henley, the finance director, he can help you.
The new
Okay, because
building.
I've talked to him
At the new
before.
administration building.
But I know who he is.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Jeannie? No. Okay. Anyone else? Audience participation is now closed. Unfinished business, relocation of Pool 1 smoking area. John?
Mr. Chairman, trustees, residents gathered here and at home, this was under new business last meeting about identifying location of the pool pit and heater for the RFP that was issued. Additionally, some of the options would require the smoking pit to be moved. The board last week, and I'm going to move to a map. At the last meeting, the board instructed us to move the new heater building and pool pit to the location that's currently the smoking pit. Mr. Klosky asked that this be put back on the agenda to identify the location for the smoking pit. I will give you a bit of updated information regarding the RFP. Due to problems we've had in the past of vendors bidding on things, of not coming out looking at the sites, aka the building A roof or roofs, depending on how you view that building, we've been using mandatory pre-bid site inspections in our RFPs, meaning if you don't come out at a certain time and verify what we're wanting done, you're not allowed to submit a proposal. We've had one vendor meet that criteria, so I'm not sure if that's going to impact your deliberations on this, but at most we'll have one bids submitted in a couple weeks on this.
Any questions from the board? And
Don't we need more than one bid to do something? I mean, can we redo it or something? You know, I mean, I hate to just say, okay, one bid, yay.
The board can do whatever they want to a degree. Ideally, we like to see 3 bids on RFPs, but we haven't found a way to force people to submit bids to us. The economy's real hot right now, and there's other probably factors that play into it, but this was put out statewide, the bid notice, and we advertised it in the local paper as required. We had one, and we're not guaranteed to receive a bid from that vendor either. It's just there's only one possible vendor that can bid at this point.
I'm looking for where the board would like to put the smoking area. I'd like to have everything done at the same time, so when the contractors come, we'll be able to do everything at one time, instead of coming back with the smoking area at another time.
Currently, Joe, isn't there an area that is a nighttime designated smoking area as well, or an
That's under the
extended?
pavilion, yeah, nighttime smoking, but
So what would stop us from just making that the smoking area, rather than just at nighttime have it be?
well, you have people there, if they're going to be smoking there, even the daytime, there'll be a lot of people that are unhappy because a lot of people would be sitting there during the daytime and they wouldn't want the secondhand smoke.
And just for the folks who may not frequent this pool area, if you can see the little white movement up there, this is the pavilion area right here, and this is the area that Trustee Loveland is talking about.
So if we put it in the, where we were talking about in the far left corner, I would rather see it go there, or wherever you want to designate it.
I think anywhere we put it, that there's going to be a population of non-smokers, we're going to have, I mean, we already have that concern with it where it is. We have people complain about smoking. So if we're going to have a smoking area, then it should be as far from non-smokers as possible, or non-smokers should be able to get.
The only thing you can do is put it outside of the fence, but you can't be standing right there where the people are walking in. So
I didn't actually know there was a nighttime smoking area because I don't go down there at night very often. But that's. I have to get in my head where it is. At the end, at the far end of the covered.
At the far end of where the picnic tables are is what they're talking about.
And there's a way to get around that way to the back of the lounge.
It's
A
over
lot
by
of
the
people-
service window, Luann.
there were a lot
The
of people.
service window, the drink service window at the
Yeah,
pool.
it's right-
over. It's right behind that.
There were a lot of people even that when after a certain time, I think it was after 7 o'clock in the evening, they can smoke there. A lot of people would complain about that too. So if you went on the far left there, probably wouldn't be so bad. I don't smoke, so I don't know where to, but
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just shortly before the meeting, one of the residents gave me a schematic, and they're suggesting the bottom of the pool area on the pool deck itself, right to the narrow passage where those, right from there down to the corner, because most wind blows to the east, which would blow any smoke out over the lake instead of, and give our alligator problems.
But when this first came up, I thought that was a better area too than on over by the A building. I thought that was a better area too to have it. I think you're right though. No matter where you put it, somebody's going to have a
yes.
pitch a fit about it. I think Steve. I think that's a good idea, right? Where Steve
Dave?
said that.
Well, it's obvious that it needs to be downwind with the prevailing winds, and they are generally out of there. I would suggest over in that bottom back corner,
Where-
right down in there, that, all the way down in that corner. That's as far away as you can get from anybody and be downwind.
Now, some people don't want, because when they have parties and everything, or when they have like the St. Patrick's Day or any of those things, a lot of people congregate there and everything, and there'll be that doesn't upset them too. So
Well, yes, but you're downwind. Where it is right now is downwind of all those functions that you have in there. Now, with the moving of that pool pit, the heater building, and everything else, that's going to open up that whole area. I had already suggested that we close off and cover and concrete and level most of the area in the smoking pit that we can to gain more access and more dancing area and more seating area out there. Along with, we're going to have to do the concrete repairs and everything else when we take the heater building out. So in conjunction with that, we could put sand, compact it, and pour concrete and level that area to make it a much larger area, and that would lessen any impact from having the southwest corner as a smoking area.
well, I guess there was a couple of people called me. They said that if any place they would like to see it, if we were going to go along with it, to put it in the far left, over in the far left there, pool, on the pool. You're facing the pool this way, it'd be on the far left on this side corner, and leave it there. It'd be much better there. They'd rather have it there.
Where are you talking?
As you're looking towards the lake, the pool is right here. It'd be on the left-hand side in the corner there.
And then you're going to be upwind with smokers. It's one of the things I'm a smoker, and I always try to make sure that I check the wind to make sure my smoke isn't blowing in somebody else's
Well, the
face.
wind is not going to be
So-
blowing the same, but by the time you
per-
smoking there, the wind will dissipate that smoke, and then it'll never get to where you think this. So I'm sorry, but that's the way I feel. I'm only doing what a couple of the residents said. See, I don't smoke, so it doesn't bother me too much, but I want to make everybody happy. Go ahead. I see you.
Elaine Vanbershot, 1090 Parkway Lane. I was doing some research on this in other areas of Florida and other businesses and restaurants and lounges, and basically, most of them ban smoking, but knowing the Bay and where we're at with this, we can't accommodate the smokers, but they are a very, very, very small percentage of our population. And if I'm correct, and we're going to delay our lounge, I think Kathy is looking to go out from the lounge toward the lake and bringing more of the entertainment out that way if we're going to get rid of that, bring the solar
Right.
heater there. So she's going to put more bands out that way. So we're opening up the lounge without building anything by expanding out that way for dancing and such. That's prime real estate for the crowds. We're enabling larger groups of people. The people at the pool will be served more by the music. Can we not take the smokers and put them in an area that is not someplace where they congregate and make that their sitting area? I always thought that if, and I do have smokers in my family, they take their cigarette, they go out of the party area, they have their cigarette, they come back in. Right now, the pit is like their home. I don't mean to be rude, but it's not made to be that, where they just sit and smoke while entertainment goes on. Can we put them, I like the idea of the nighttime place because no one is back there. No one is back there. Other than occasionally we have a party back there. But what about that corner where that fence is, going out towards the sidewalk there? Over here. This is the lounge up over in here.
Yeah, okay.
See that area up there? Up to the, yeah, see the
Yeah,
cement area?
that's the end of the nighttime smoking
Right,
area
right.
now. Yeah.
It's not covered. But we certainly could accommodate in that direction, and then you're not affecting anyone with the smoke at all. And it's not really made, the smoking area is not supposed to be an area where people just go and sit. They're supposed to go and have their cigarette and come back and be part of the group. So, my opinion.
Thank you.
Carol Joseph, 966 Waterway Drive. I agree with everything that Elaine just said, and we, many years ago, decided we weren't going to allow smoking at the pools and so forth unless it was out of the way of the public in general, because we know it's been banned in restaurants and all public facilities. We know it's bad, and the pools have a lot of children, and I really am not in favor of having the smoking area on the pool deck, because when we're in the pool now, and you know, most of you know that I'm at the pool all the time with class and all, and if somebody lights up a cigarette, even in the smoking area, people in the pool are going, oh, somebody's smoking. A lot of people are sensitive, allergic, and all those things that we already know. So I also agree with the fact that I think where it is now, that whole area towards the corner that Elaine just mentioned is perfect, because we don't need to have prime space for smokers. If they want a cigarette, they could leave their group or their family area and go and have a cigarette and come back. But I do think keeping them as separate as possible is important. And I also like Mr. Wheaton's idea of filling in the pit, so to speak, and giving us more dance area, because there isn't enough when there's a good band. Thank you.
Thank you. What's the board's wishes? What do you want to do?
I think the viable solution is the one that Mr. Loveland came up with, and change that nighttime designated smoking area as the smoking area. Might want to
Okay.
might want to change the benches out there to more seating with tables and chairs, so to accommodate that. But Mr. Loveland's solution seems to be the best.
Well, if that's what you would like to have, you make it in the form of a motion.
Is that a motion?
Is that a motion? Wait,
Yeah, well, I make a motion that we take the nighttime smoking area, make it a full-time smoking area, extend that to the area that Elaine Vandershot brought up, the open area. That way they have a covered and a non-covered area. And I make a motion that we move the smoking to that area on a regular basis.
John,
Can I-
before
can
you
I-
have a second,
Can I seek clarification? Do you want this to happen now, or do you want to wait to make sure we're actually going to be moving the smoking pit, the pool pit and the heater building to that location? Because there's a possibility, like Building A, come back, this project doesn't happen. So just clarification, is this a contingent motion, or is it make it happen as soon as possible?
I think it should happen as soon as possible, because we're going to move that pit, whether it's with this RFP or the next or the next or the next. It's going to happen. So it would be good to have that area. We don't have to go through this again. We've got that piece out of the way, and then that pit area is open for construction.
And that'll give the smokers a chance to complain. And then,
Okay,
you know,
I
and
second
they'll complain, and then they'll
second
get used to it, then that'll be the
I
end.
second it.
okay.
And I second.
Mr. Loveland
Dave
made a
seconded,
motion,
okay.
seconded by Mr. Whedon. Any other further discussion on that?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
In light of the discussions that we've had here today, I think that's the best solution to satisfy the smokers and satisfy the non-smokers in the Bay. And it isn't too often that I agree with my colleague to my left here, but I'm going to agree with him today.
Thank you. It sounds very good. I think that's going in the right direction there. So if there's no further discussion on it, I want to vote on it. Randy? Luann? Mr. Whedon? Steve?
Yes.
I say yes too, so it's unanimous. 5-0. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Harvey Smith. I live at 723 Gladiolus Drive.
Put your mic on. Is the mic on?
Oh, I'm sorry. It is on. 723 Gladiolus Drive. I'm a new owner here, and I agree with the smoking section being moved. I also wanted to bring up that when you come into the pool area and you have to check in and show your badge, that gate, they all smoke right there, and it's like walking through a plume of smoke. And it's very offensive to a lot of people that don't smoke. You have to hold your breath walking through there. If you're going to make that a smoking area, can you make that for everybody, not leave that one by the gate?
That would be the employees and everybody.
Yes. I'm sorry to do that to the
sounds-
employees, but I'm,
I like that a little better too, because I know some of the employees, they stand smoke outside of the gate and everything, and I know when you walk through there, you can smell the smoke and everything, so.
Building A seems to be fine. The smoking area is there, you walk through it, it doesn't bother everybody, but that one, it does.
Yes, we can do that, yes.
And it was nice that this was brought up, because last week when I was at Pool 1, we sat to the left side where you wanted to put that smoking area, and someone was smoking there. We asked them not to, nicely. We just brought it up that, you can't smoke in the area. And they replied, well, I'm a homeowner, I know the rules.
Oh, okay.
So you give them an inch, you take a mile. That's my opinion. I mean, I don't care about, how it goes about, but it was wrong. I'm a homeowner too.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
That go you with the board? Okay. Okay, fine, thank you very much. The next on the agenda is the lounge project referendum. Since Luann put it on the agenda, Luann, you want to talk about it?
I asked for it to be put back on the agenda because we sort of had a comprehensive vote or whatever. It wasn't an official vote because it wasn't an official meeting. But anyway, I spent a lot of time, I voted to not put this out for referendum. And if anybody was here, they know that I was very torn one way about what to do. I just need, I guess, for my coworkers here, co-trustees, whatever, to explain to me one more time why this should not go to referendum, because after I thought about it, I was sorry that I actually voted not to go to referendum. So I think now we need to make an official vote on this. So that's why it's on the agenda today.
I did wish Mr. Riffner was here, I don't know where he went, so if the board wants to discuss it about what they want to do.
Mr. Chairman, the reason I suggested we do not go to referendum on this is because we have a ruling, Judge Rainwater gave us a ruling that stated that anything we do within the platted grounds of Barefoot Bay is exempt from the referendum ruling. I understand, I didn't go to law school, I don't practice to be a lawyer, but I can read English fairly well. It's my understanding that from that decision of Rainwater, Judge Rainwater, we can do anything to improve the district facilities within the platted grounds of Barefoot Bay. That means to me that anything within the existing boundary of Barefoot Bay, we could do whatever we need to do to improve the district's facilities. If, however, we decided we wanted to buy the 8.25 acres that are on the entrance of Barefoot Bay, that's not the platted grounds of Barefoot Bay. That would require us to go to referendum. That's why I'm opposed to going to referendum. We have two rulings, actually, from one from rainwater and one regarding I can't remember the case, but it was regarding the irrigation on the golf course. Both situations stated that it did not have to go to referendum. Now, I wish our attorney was here, because he, at one of the meetings recently, stated he believed, along with me, that it was his thought process that he was willing to defend if someone brings a lawsuit against the Bay trying to block the expansion that against a referendum, such as Gunther did with the Gunther versus Barefoot Bay for the new administration building. It was his feeling that we could defend. We can sue. Anybody can sue whoever they want. It's a free country, but it was his feeling that we had a very good ground to stand and to defend and to win that lawsuit. I would be of the mind that if someone does bring a lawsuit and blocks the proceeding and is found to be a defective lawsuit, then I would be of the mind to instruct our legal counsel to file a claim against the person who brought the lawsuit for damages, for any additional construction costs that were incurred because of the delays and everything associated with it. I do not believe that a referendum is needed, and I think we should move forward with these within the platted grounds of Barefoot Bay. And that's my feeling.
Then what's the cap, the $25,000 cap? Then what's that for? I mean, there's a cap of $25,000 or something? I mean, isn't that? I mean, what is that for then? What does the cap do? I mean, what is it capping, I guess? I don't know.
Well, the cap, you have to go back to looking at, and sorry I missed the first part of the discussion. You have to go back and look at the actual charter language. And, we've done this several times here, and obviously we have a number of court decisions that address it. The language under that section of the charter reads as follows. I'll read it to you. This falls under the powers of the district, says to enter into contracts involving the purchase, lease, conveyance, and other manner of acquisition of common real or tangible personal property. So it says in any instance when the cost, price, or consideration of such acquisition, it's an acquisition, exceeds $25,000. Okay, so that's what the purpose of the cap is, that if you have a one-time tangible personal property acquisition, that is a new acquisition that you don't currently have that exceeds $25,000, the cap applies. What the cases have said, and the two cases that we have on it are Mulhern and Ginther case. What those cases have said is that the district has an obligation under its charter within its powers and duties to maintain its existing properties, to operate and maintain its existing properties. When you read those two cases together, without going into a great detail of analysis again, the courts have said that if you are maintaining and operating existing properties, which includes improvements, as we've seen with regard to the administration building. We had a faulty administration building. The court found that there was a need for the district to have administrative operations out of a center, and that it could expend funds for the purpose of building that building without running afoul of the charter, because it had an obligation to maintain and operate its facilities, and that fell within that maintenance exemption. And actually, what the court actually found, I mean, there were two orders. One, the first order finding that the building of the building was not necessarily maintenance; it wasn't defined as maintenance. And the second order finding that even though it wasn't maintenance, it still met the operational duty requirement of things that the district had an operational duty to do, and so it was exempt from the cap. That's what that case says. When you look at these expenditures, you're talking about expansion of an existing building currently owned and operated by the district. If you look at the expenditures, it's difficult to reconcile, and I know that there is a difficulty here. It's even difficult for me after many years of reading the charter and interpreting it and looking at the cases. But when you actually look at and you read the way project descriptions are written, for instance, replace concrete pavers west of the lounge. You're replacing pavers. What's the component of the replacement that is paver, and what is the labor cost? You'd like to see that broken out. But if you were going to look at the cap for a true cap analysis, you'd look at like new acquisition. Well, now is the acquisition of any one paver or any set of pavers or anything, does that trigger the cap? I mean, what is the actual trigger? Some of these things are kind of nebulous in the way that you can calculate when you get to the $25,000 point. But essentially, the cases that you have right now, without even getting into that analysis of whether any one particular portion of a project is tripping over $25,000 or not, does it fall within the same category of things that the Ginther case fell into and that the Mulhern case fell into? And the expansion of an existing lounge probably does. Can I give you that assurance with absolute certainty? No, because every project is different. And every case, if we were to litigate this case, it might be seen in a different way than the administration building. The administration building, and a big distinguishing factor between this and the administration building is you had an absolute need, or the district had an absolute need to replace that administration building. There was no one disputed the fact that that building was falling apart, and that it had outlasted its useful life. Although I understand that it held up pretty good in the demo, but nobody debated the fact that it needed to be replaced. When you're talking about expansion of a lounge, you get into a discussion about need versus want a little bit more. And would a court see a desire to expand in the same light that it would see the need to replace an administration building to house your staff? I don't know the answer to that question. I think we could make a compelling argument that it's a similar function, that it serves a similar, or that the analysis is similar based on the fact that it's an existing structure, but I can't give you an absolute certainty on that. So, based on the case law as I see it, if the board wants to move forward without a referendum, you're only going to know whether that's appropriate if you get a challenge and it gets litigated by the courts. If it doesn't get litigated by the courts, then you'd never know the answer to that question. And as I always say when we address cap issues, there's certainly nothing that prohibits you from putting it out for referendum. So if the will of the board is, hey, we feel like we want to put this out, well, you certainly can put it out. There's nothing that prohibits you from doing that. So, but I would suspect, based on my reading of the cases, that there'd be a pretty good argument to be made that you're in a similar posture to the Ginther case with regard to this expansion.
Mr. Rippinger, what I'd like to know is, what if this project did start and the contractors started tearing some lounge out, and at that time somebody came and filed a lawsuit, that project would have to stop.
Yeah.
At that time, would we be liable to pay that contractor all the time that he put into it up to that date, and then let it sit and rest, or how would that happen?
Well, that's a great question, and it was certainly a fear of mine going into the administration building project. When we moved into that project, when that project was approved for by the board to move forward, there were, I mean, it wasn't just a speculation. I mean, there were people that were coming up to the lectern that were telling us, we are going to bring a suit against you to challenge this expenditure. So we had full expectation that we likely would get challenged. And quite candidly, I was hopeful that that challenge would come before we got too deep into the project so that it could be determined before you got into a situation like you're describing. In a case like this, if you approved moving forward and you got into the project and you signed the agreements and we did get a challenge, it certainly could come in the middle of the project and it could create some difficulties. I think that the challenger would have to move for some type of an injunction to get the court to order an injunction to stop the project. At that point, if we're already that deep into the project, we would probably have a good argument against the injunction to stop the project as we move forward. So I don't know how the court would reconcile those two things, but we would certainly resist an injunctive claim if that was what the challenger were to file to try to stop the project. The project would move forward.
But meanwhile, that project would stop if there was a lawsuit put. Like you said, we'd have fight and everything. But meanwhile, we're staying still and we can't do nothing.
Well, I wouldn't recommend, if you get that far into a project, if you're in the design phase or if you're in the first initial phases of a project and it hasn't broken ground yet and you are still at a point that you can manage stopping the project while you litigate that issue and you want to do that in an abundance of caution, then you can make that call as far as whether you think that that's a good thing to do from a political perspective.
What you're trying to say is that would stop it before the project really started. I'm referring to that if the project has started and it was raised, some of the stuff was already taken, construction has started, some of that, and meanwhile we can't use the lounge or anything like that. Yeah. That's going to tie everything up.
Once you get that far into a project, I would not be sitting here recommending that you stop a project. I would say the onus is on the challenger to bring an injunctive claim to try to stop the project at that point.
So we would continue with the project while the guy is fighting it?
Until we would get hit with an injunction. And at that point in time, whoever is bringing the challenge would have to file a bond, would have to post a bond to deal with the issues related to damages that the injunction could cause. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I have all the answers. I don't. I can't foresee the future, so I don't know what that looks like as far as what the court will do with it. I think we could make a compelling argument on both the injunction and on the ultimate issue, but I can't tell you with absolute certainty that how either issue is going to come out. I know that I lean toward relying on the authority that we have, because that's the authority we have. We have Mulhern, we have Ginther, but great minds sometimes see differently. So
well, that's why I just wanted to ask you, because I feel myself, you're making the big bucks while I'm sitting here and not making nothing. So.
Mr. Rippinger, the design phase is at $145,000, so that would be probably, in my opinion, and I guess I need to know if I'm right, that is outside the cap. That's probably a legal challenge to do that, more so than the actual construction, which we as trustees are required to maintain and develop facilities as the dynamics change and to meet the needs, whether it's food and beverage of the people.
Not to interrupt you, if the cap applies, you're correct. What you're saying is, and I think where you're going is, you're correct. You trigger right at the design phase. If the cap applies, right there you're over the cap, and that does get encompassed in the cap because of the way that the charter section is written by saying that it includes all obligations proposed to be assumed in connection with the acquisition. So that includes design. That includes everything that goes into the project, not just the tangible acquisition, but everything. So if it does apply, then you're over right there. And the hope would be that if you didn't put it out for referendum, that you'd get challenged at that stage so that you wouldn't incur too much expense.
Well, it's my feeling, if going to referendum, nothing has ever passed referendum.
Right.
And we need expanded services, especially at the lounge. I was told 2 years ago, when I brought up the possibilities of us losing employees during construction, that we had a lounge project that was proposed and we were going to move ahead with it. And up until 6 months ago, we didn't. So I think it's time we move on.
Jim, my argument on this has always been the referendum is a fatally flawed process. And by that, we had 25% of the Bay voted in the presidential election, which is our largest election, which brings out the most voters. Of those, 7% of those voters were not homeowners that voted of that 25%. That left 75% of our homeowners out in the cold without an opinion or without, well, a few chose not to, but a large number, or greater than 50% of our homeowners, had absolutely no say in what goes on in the Bay. And we hear that continually. They're vested every bit as much as any homeowner in here is. And so that makes a referendum a very fatally flawed process when we're looking for build and expansion and taking care of their interest as well.
So, let me ask you, what is the pleasure of the board? Do you want to go with the referendum or no? It's up. You guys make a motion.
I would make a motion that we do not go with referendum.
I need a second.
I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion on that motion? If none, need a voice vote? Steve?
Yes, in favor of the motion not to proceed with the referendum.
Luann? What is it? You know, you're voting no? Mr. Whedon?
Yes.
Yes. Randy?
Yes, we should not go to referendum.
I'll vote yes not to go to referendum either because, so it's 4-1 to not to go to referendum. And I put a lot of faith in Mr. Reppinger and so. Okay. Next is the CVO donation pavilion change order number 1. John?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, trustees, as we were proceeding to make the final payment for the pavilion, we discovered that inadvertently we had overlooked the request from the CVO to do a change order for a tongue and groove ceiling and spruce diagonal support for an additional $5,065.95. Mr. Compton, the CVO president, has sent an email and verbally discussed with me his willingness to pay for that. Staff recommends acceptance of the donation and authorization of the change order.
Need a motion?
I make a motion that we accept the change order for $5,065.95 for the CVO.
Randy made a motion. Need a second?
I'll second the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Steve Adam made it second. Any other discussion on this motion? Not all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. So what, you vote no? 4-1, okay, thank you.
Joe, can I ask a question, please?
Yes.
The mic is on. I just wanted to know if the all the money from the class action suit has now been spent? Or is there still money left there? Can you, I'm sorry? Can you tell me how much? Approximately? About 75,000? About $7,000? All right, thank you.
Okay, we should know that because this is not district business, this is with CVO, so it should not have been brought up at the meeting here, but, okay. Next, the agenda is the community center parking study proposal. John?
Mr. Chairman, for those who do not come to every single workshop, the board has discussed over the past year and a half or so expansion of the lounge. As the board is moving closer to funding the design that's in the proposed FY20 budget, the issue of parking has arisen. Per Brevard County statutes, there is no one person who you can call up and get a number when recreational amenities are involved. A study has to be conducted to look at the passive and active aspects of the specific park structures. Per the board's direction at the April 16th workshop, I've reached out to TLC. This proposal for $7,500 would give us a definitive number of parking spots we currently need in Building A for the community center and all surrounding buildings. This, in my opinion, is a very good first step before deciding on the exact size of the lounge expansion, because we may come back that we got exactly what we need. We may come back that we have a surplus. We may come back that we're short, and that would probably factor into y'all's decision. So staff recommends approval of the proposal in the amount of $7,500 and to authorize staff to prepare a budget amendment for a future agenda.
Board of Trustees, I'm looking for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, we have to know what we have for parking now, what we need for parking for an expansion to the lounge, and we might find that a 4,000 square foot addition to the lounge is impossible without adding a parking garage in the existing parking lot. I know we can probably pick up some additional parking along Veterans Way by taking some of those greens, the grassy areas out, and give us some additional parking, but I don't think it's going to be enough parking for a 4,000 square foot addition to the lounge. And we might have to look at a smaller addition. So I think it's a good thing to do, and I'm in favor of it. I'll make a motion that we accept the recommendation of staff.
Mr. Diana made a motion, second. And Mr. Whedon, any other discussion on that motion? No further discussion. All in favor of that motion with a voice vote? Randy?
Aye.
Mr. Whedon? Luann? Steve?
Yes.
Joe? Yes. Passes 5-0. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the Building A renovation construction drawing proposal. John?
As most folks know, we issued an RFP for 3 projects that the board on February 26th agreed to combine into one. We received 2 proposals. One did not meet the scoping specs. The other was rejected by the evaluation committee. On April 23rd, in discussing the evaluation committee's recommendation, y'all instructed me to seek a proposal from TLC to update the kitchen design and to add in construction drawings for the electrical and HVAC components, and then reissue the RFP in November for a summer 2020 project. The attached proposal for $28,400 accomplishes that. Staff recommends approval unless otherwise directed.
Looking for a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. everything, all the things that we do goes through TLC. Now, I understand that TLC was given carte blanche by another Board of Trustees, but they're the only people that we ever go to, because that's what another board decided. I'm wondering if maybe we should, I don't know if it takes another RFP to get more information on that. I mean, as I read this, it's $28,400, and then they add things, and I'd sort of yay me and stuff it to you guys. If they never have anybody else bidding on things or whatever, then they can charge us whatever they want. So that's my, I guess it's a question is, can we do that? Can we divide out, and also can we divide out the three projects? It was sort of a, again, we sort of agreed to do that, but it was never, I don't think, taken to a vote to put all those projects for Building 8 together. I'm just wondering if there's a better way to do it, because if we do it in three separate entities, whatever, it's going to be cheaper than doing it as one giant project. I think we need to reconsider this.
Okay, back on February 22nd, the board staff recommended these three projects be combined into one project, which will be released as a single request for proposal. Nobody went against that, and you all voted for it. And also,
Was it a vote? Did we take a vote in it? Did we all vote yes, or did we go, okay?
and then also the board's consensus that Mr. Loveland will fill the required trustee seat on the committee. That was also went along with the board. Nobody rejected at that time. And on February 26, 2019, the board agreed to combine the four projects into a single project, and staff issued a request for the proposal RFP. So
Mr. Chairman.
I don't see why we would be going at it individually now when you all went and agreed with it at that time.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, did I misunderstand the question? Was your question intended to say, should we look at other engineering firms?
Yeah, that's how it started. It started with maybe we should look at another engineering firm, and then it
Okay.
sort of morphed into the A building, but, because it's about the A building. But, yeah, I think maybe we should look at other engineering firms.
That
The board can do whatever the board wants to. Typically, engineering services are not selected on an RFP basis where price is factored in. You can do that, and you'll probably get cheaper rates because there's always somebody who can do something cheaper. TLC was selected through an RFQ process where price was not factored in and looked at qualifications, the primary component. Price was a negotiated term after the fact. If the board wants to go out for a new engineering firm, multiple engineering firms, we can do whatever we want. I've never worked in a place where we price shop designs before, so maybe we'll break some new ground with this, but it's whatever the board's pleasure on this is.
Well, it's not necessarily that I'm shopping prices, it's just that they can charge whatever they want because they know that we're going to use them. They can charge us $8 million if they want, because they know that nobody else is going to be, have a bid at it or whatever. That's all. That's all I'm saying. I mean, if everybody thinks that TLC is fine, and then they're fine.
Well,
I just was curious as to what the rest of the board thought.
Their contract, if Ms. Myers can get you a copy of their contract is based on specific fees per type of skilled employee. Once again, it's, the engineers, legal and management work at the pleasure of the board.
Dave?
With standard architectural and design fees, it's pretty much a percentage of the total cost of the project. And I think that's pretty standard through the industry, isn't it?
I'm not going to touch that one.
Well, if that's what it is, a percentage of what the building or whatever's going to be, I mean, then okay, but I didn't know that, but because I know we always use TLC, and I just thought maybe somebody else might have another idea, that's all.
Steve?
I would like to see us proceed with this, the 28,400. TLC just built us a new building. I think it's something was well needed. I think they performed well in other things they've done for us. So I don't have a problem with TLC. I think, when we start to change horses in halfway down the thoroughfare, then to me it's not going in the right direction. I think TLC has performed well for us in the past. I think they will continue to perform well.
I've never been dissatisfied with TLC's front and whatever they did. I was always happy with them, so I agree with you, Steve. Randy?
Well, I look at TLC like I would look at, if you put it on a homeowner level, like I would look at my lawn man, like I would look at the barber, which I don't need, but like Richard needs. Sure, there's cheaper barbers and there's cheaper lawn services, but I'm happy with the service that we've got, so I wouldn't change that
Because
service.
we might not get the service that we
You might
do
not
with
get the
TLC.
service.
Yes,
Exactly. I could get cheaper, and it would be great if I could get TLC at half TLC price.
Right.
But we're not in a metropolis where that could actually happen, where there's people beating down our door to come and design for our relatively small projects in the big world of building.
Right.
So I'm happy with TLC.
Well, Steve, was that in the form of a motion, or you want to make a motion on it?
I'll make a motion that we continue to use TLC and approve the $28,400.
Steve made the motion. I need a second.
I'll second.
Randy seconded. Any other discussion on this motion? If none, voice vote. Randy?
Aye.
Luann? Mr. Whedon? Steve?
Yes.
Joey, yes. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Next is the foreclosure of properties with excessive liens, and I understand that's Mr. Whedon put that on the agenda. Would you like to speak?
Yes. As chairman of the Neighborhood Revitalization Program, and having talked to some of the employees around here, that there's a huge amount of money and time by staff that's owed to the Bay by people who are behind. The 21 people on the list, I had asked Mr. Amity to come up with a list of properties that were in excess of $5,000 in just the cost of Matt's services for mowing lawns and pressure washing, and homeowners that were not homesteaded. Now, the total amount just in these 21, there are a lot more that owe less than $5,000, but just these 21 homeowners actually owe Barefoot Bay roughly $352,711, with one homeowner in arrears over $50,000. This is not only a lot of work for property services, Matt and his people, it's a lot of money. Rich, would you care to add anything, or have I covered everything?
I think you've covered it pretty well.
So,
Rich?
Dave, I have a quick question. You mentioned that there's one homeowner that's over 50,000. I know, but you mentioned, I'm looking for the homeowner you mentioned. You mentioned there was a homeowner on here for over 50,000 in
You have the
arrears.
same sheet?
Yes, I'm looking at that. What's up on the board?
Would that probably be Vinnie Sutter's?
Well, it's 614 Puffin, it's 413 Plover, 881 Cashew, 416 Barefoot Boulevard. Yes,
Are you talking combined that they're owned by one person?
yes.
Oh, okay.
They're owned by one person.
I don't mean to stick my nose where it don't belong. I tend to do that anymore, but 614 Puffin Drive has a combined county and district outstanding of $22,116. That's what the subtotal line means. Maybe we're not looking at the same information.
Well, I just had, I have the working sheet here. But yes, when you take roughly 60% of what's owed to the county is actually our money in our fees.
Rich?
Yeah, the only thing that I would add is when you look at the taxes that are due also, I'm not sure, it's probably in the 300,000 range, Trustee Wheaton?
Yes, they owe property services $205,000.
Well, what about county, what about taxes?
I took the roughly 60%
Okay.
of what they owe the county in taxes and added that to the 205. That's why we come up, it was 148. So
That was the only thing that I would have added, was that 60 to 70% of the taxes that are due, once we acquire the properties, or if we have to pay them, we'll get all that money back, because the money on an empty lot is owed to us, not many other
That's the
people.
assessment fees and everything, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I would like to make a motion that the Board of Trustees direct Mr. Reppinger, our legal, to start processing foreclosure on these properties immediately, and he could work with Mr. Armington to have the most important ones first. That was made in the form of a motion.
Okay, before you, I need a second on that.
Wait, could you repeat the motion?
My motion was for the Board of Trustees to direct our attorney to start the foreclosure process immediately.
Okay, I need a second. Luann seconded. Okay. Mr. Reppinger. Go ahead.
I'm Roger Compton, 423 Puffin. I mean, I had just come up here to express support for Trustee Wheaton's proposal. I think this is a great idea. Right now, our investment in these properties go up every month. The sooner we can take possession and turn it into income by having somebody buy that property and start paying their fees every year, the better for us. So I think this is a great thing.
Mr. Reppinger, I've seen you were shaking your head.
Yeah, this is something that on the surface looks like a no-brainer. But there are many different variables to this, and I'm going to try to get into this because you really need to consider things before you go down this road with a broad motion. There may be a solution here, but it may not be the motion that's on the floor right now. When you start to have a dialogue about the costs related to curative efforts in the DOR enforcement process, and staff can probably say what I'm about to say because they've heard me say it a million times, but the discussion point needs to start at the genesis and the idea behind why you're going through and expending what you're expending on these properties. When I came to the districts, in 2007, there were very limited curative efforts that were going on with respect to DOR enforcement. And when we rewrote the process because of the litigations that we were involved in related to DOR enforcement, one of the things that we did in order to be able to move these cases out of the judicial realm was to give the district the authority to go onto the properties and take curative action, which is provided for in the deed of restrictions, but wasn't in formal resolution form. When that was done, and let's focus solely on lot mowing, when that was done, the resolutions, we worked with staff to come up with reasonable costs that we thought were supportable under those resolutions for purposes of costs related to those actions. And what you see on this sheet in terms of the expenditures, at least with regard to lot mowing, is the impact of staff going out and taking these curative efforts to resolve these issues. When that decision was made to move forward in that realm and make those expenditures, my advice to the board was at the time, and it is today still, was that the expenditure of those funds was a cost of doing business, essentially, to keep the community looking good, and was a worthwhile expenditure because of the fact that you were curing these violations versus spending money in hollow administrative actions and pursuing judgments that would never be complied with. You had to go into that, the board had to go into that endeavor with the idea that, hey, we can place these liens, but this is number one, not going to be a money-making endeavor. This is going to be a cure violation issue. It's the goal of the program is to achieve compliance, and the financial aspects of the program are secondary to achieving compliance. Now, looking at this list, what you have to understand is that most of these properties, and I can't tell you for a fact because there's a number of different properties on the list, most of these properties are against, or most of these cases involve properties where you've got absentee owners, you got people that haven't paid taxes, they're gone, they're out of state, you can't serve them. On a number of them. They may be deceased. You may have estate issues. And that's a problem that is just inherent in a lot of the properties that we have that are DOR enforcement problems. That's going to create a problem in and of itself in the litigations if you move forward with foreclosure, but that's neither here nor there. I'm pointing it out just as a matter of note. What you have to understand is that even on cases where you can get service on a foreclosure case, if you were to bring a case for foreclosure for the amount that's due, and let's assume for the sake of argument, and what you don't know, what this list doesn't tell you, is whether there are any other liabilities against any of these other properties. You know that they're not homestead because you can see that, but you don't know whether there's any other liabilities against these properties. You don't know whether there's mortgages. You don't know whether there's any kind of encumbrances against them. You have no idea. All you know is what you spent and the total amount of taxes that are due. On some of them, it's sizable as far as the tax liability. I would assume that on probably a number of them, there's a number of other encumbrances that are lien, that the district's lien as a DOR enforcement cost lien is going to be secondary to. So that's something that you have to think about too. Assuming that you could foreclose one of these properties without another encumbrance upon it, if you were to go all the way through to a judgment, get a judgment and set a sale date, because of the amount of the taxes that are due and because of the amount of the costs that are due, chances are on most of these properties, you may get a credit on the purchase for up to the amount of your lien. And again, assuming that there's no other priority lien in front of you. But what you would get would be a property subject to the taxes that are due on it, for which you all would have to pay. And so what you're doing when you're making this motion and authorizing me to move forward is essentially incurring $245,000 potentially of liability that you're going to go ahead and acquire to pay as part of the tax component of this analysis. So when you really start to look at it and then you say, well, we're incurring $245,000 potentially in tax liabilities to recover 205, well, that
Oh, excuse me. 60 to 70% of that 245 is ours that the county would give us. So that number is much less. And
I don't know how it breaks down. All I can tell you is, and that you're going to be required to waive that. The county's not going to give you money.
So.
Like, if you could just let me finish, and I'll be more than happy to engage in the dialogue, because I'm not telling you that you can't move forward. I'm just telling you what I'm trying to give you a very realistic picture of what you're looking at here. Well, even assuming that these are dollars that are district dollars in the tax component, you're still going to have to waive those amounts or deal with them when you acquire, because you're going to acquire the property subject to that liability. You're not going to get that money. If you do like I was running the numbers just kind of loosely, but if you look at it, when you look at the assessed value of the properties, I mean, if you just discount what you're owed versus the tax liability, you can figure, well, there's a roughly a $40,000 difference there between the taxes owed and the amounts that you've spent. But then you look at the offset in value. The valuations are, the properties are worth $467,000. If you figure that, and I'm not saying that you could, but even if you could, just doing a little math on it, if you had, if you spent, you're also talking about the expenditure of legal fees that you're going to tack on at the end of this. So let's say you're doing foreclosures for $2,500 to $5,000 a case. Yeah, you can tack on costs and a judgment at the end, but you're not recovering that amount from anyone, because all you're getting at the end is a property with a tax liability against it that's worth $13,000 on assessed value. So when you really start to add it up, the difference between what you would recover in costs and value versus what you'd have to spend to go recover these dollars is very little, if not, you may be in the hole in terms of your expenditures versus what you'd get out of it. To me, what's important to keep in mind, and again, I'm not telling you that you can't do this, I'm telling you that there's a significant financial component to this, is that if you lost my train of thought for a second, but the amount of money, the amount of legal fees and costs that you would spend, and then in recovery, and that's assuming that you can actually get to the judgment point on those properties. I don't think it offsets it enough to justify moving forward into the foreclosures. So from a purely financial, from a purely economic standpoint, and the thing to really keep in mind is that it's not that you're not going to recover these dollars. It's that you're not going to recover them today. You recover a lot of the cost liens against these properties when foreclosures happen and when tax deed sales happen. If a tax deed sale happens, and a lot of these, given how much is outstanding in taxes, these are going to tax deed sales soon, a lot of them. And you're constantly cycling through tax deed sales. When a property sells at tax deed sales, the owner, when they purchase it, will come to the district for an estoppel and say, hey, how much is owed on the account? And at that time they pay. And you don't have to spend $1 to get that money. You're getting that money. Are you getting it all in one lump sum? No. Is there an outstanding liability on your books because you're spending money to cure these violations? Yes, there is. But you knew that going in. And so you're recovering money over time, but you're not having to spend a dime to go get it. What you're talking about is spending money that may not financially make sense to then potentially either waive or spend more money that's owed. And that's particularly enlightening if you're talking about the fact that most of the taxes that are owed to the district, because then you're going to waive all those fees unless you're going to pay them to yourself, because you would recover those fees out of the tax deed sales. So when you really start looking at it financially, what looks like a good idea to go recover $205,000 of costs really financially doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Miss, are you saying that we would not get our portion of that tax money back?
How would you get it? If you foreclose, you own the property. Who's going to pay it?
So the solution is roll over and play dead?
Well, no, that's not my solution. What my solution is if you're interested in moving forward and evaluating whether it's worthwhile to foreclose some of these properties to recover the amounts that are owed, I don't think that that's a bad idea to look at it. I think it's not probably a good idea to say we just want to, as a blanket motion, say we want to foreclose all these properties. What I would suggest that the motion probably should be is to direct me to work with staff to identify certain properties on this list that don't have any encumbrances against them, other encumbrances against them, that are possible for service, that given where they are in the tax liability process, it would make sense to go after and foreclose, and then try to compile a list of these that we actually think financially make sense to go after. There may be some value in doing that and looking at this list, but you know, I haven't gone into great layered detail about looking at any one individual property because I wasn't sure what you're going to do today. But I do think it is worthwhile kind of looking at some of these properties, and Rich may even know, hey, we think that this is worthwhile, or we think that this is worthwhile to go after and try to get. You know, but that's probably the way that I would do it, rather than just to say, yeah, we want to foreclose them all. Because there may be some that you say, no, we don't want to foreclose that one. There's too much liability.
The one at 423 Seagull is $31,000, and it'll probably go to the July tax deed. So what you're saying is that
what I'm saying is, well, if you use that one as an example, let's say that it is on track to go to the July tax deed sale. Well, table this and watch it for a month and see what happens when it goes to sale. If it sells and you get paid, then you have the answer to your question, which is you're getting paid as they sell, and you're not spending any money to go get it. You know, so that's just something. I mean, it's if I were to do it, I would definitely be cautious and be selective about which ones you're going to go after. And I think there may be some on this list that we feel like, yeah, it is worthwhile to go get them. It makes financial sense to do it. But I'm afraid of what you may wind up with if you try to foreclose them all in one lump sum in terms of the finances of it.
well, I'm sure you wouldn't go after them all at the same time. You don't probably have enough lawyers in time to do that, but that's why I was going to suggest that it would be under the direction of Mr. Armitage, our DOR.
And that's fine. If you want to amend the motion to say, hey, let's selectively do this, then I don't have any problem with that at all.
Yes,
Change your motion.
I'd like to change the motion to have it under the direction of Mr. Armitage on a selective basis to go to foreclosure on these properties.
Okay, I need a second on that. Okay, any further discussion on that? Randy?
Mr. Chairman?
Okay.
Upon looking at the list and everything, it concerned me a little bit. One of the things that I look at is, okay, we're not going to get the money that's due BBRD. The taxes are still going to be due from Brevard County. You know, if we sell the property at an auction, we know what lots, from experience, what they sold for in the past. We'd be in a deficit situation in most of these cases. But then I look at, we're not going to be using our resources to mow twice a month, and we're not going to be using our other resources involved on the properties. We are hopefully going to sell the property and get the value of what we've been getting for the property, which would be a deficit. But then I look at, we would at that point, the lots transferred, we would at that point get the social membership fee and then the monthly membership
Maybe an
fees.
assessment roll.
So it'd be adding to the tax, our assessment rolls. So, you know, there's some logic there. And, you know, I'm hesitant to go after all the properties, and I think what Mr. Wheaton did with the selective properties, I think is a good compromise, and I think it's something that we can work with and accomplish what I thought would be interesting to accomplish with this. And Mr. Wheaton, for the second time today, I'm in agreement with you.
You're starting to learn.
Randy?
Well, I'll be that black sheep today. I looked at these properties as well before the meeting. There's one, this 516 Royal Turn Drive. That property's in really very good shape, and it's being lived in by the homeowner. She just has not homesteaded the property for whatever reason, I don't know. She doesn't own a property anywhere else. And I have a problem with, when we say foreclosure, I have a problem foreclosing on one of our residents that's living in a home. So that would be number one, that we have to clean this list up. And like Cliff said, and if we look at low end on our legal fees on this, we're looking at $50,000 to foreclose on all of these. And that's at the low end of $2,000 per property. So if you take the $450,000 total due, add the $50,000 attorney fees, you're looking at putting in $500,000. And if you got the highest end of assessed value, you're still going to be about $40,000 short. But my bigger concern on this list was the fact that we have 3 on here that have houses on them. They're not all empty lots. I would think that we should carve out the empty lots, look at those first, because once we do a title search, because the title search has not been done on any of this, and that's going to incur a cost. And once we do title search, then we'll find out who else has liens on these properties and what line of progression we're in for being paid. But I think that we need to take these 3 with houses on them out, because I think that they're going to be very, very specific in the way that we look at them. And I definitely think that we need, if we didn't take all 3 of them out, at least take the one out that's on Royal Turn that's got one of our homeowners living in it, because I don't want to take anybody's home.
There were
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, only 3.
Any other further discussion on this motion? If not, all in favor of the motion with a voice vote? Mr. Whedon? Luann? Steve?
Yes, with a limited number of lots.
Okay. Randy?
I'm going to vote no till the motion changes.
I'm going to vote yes on it, because I'd like to see these taken. I know you're talking about the lady or whoever's living in the home. I don't want to see that taken, but she's living there. I can still understand she don't have such a high amount here, then why she's not doing something with it. But, okay, she's got $31,000 on it. But, yeah, I'm voting yes on it, so the motion passes 4-1.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
This raises a question with me. This homeowner at Royal Turn, who is not homesteaded, owns no other property anywhere else. I'm curious if there's some way that we could reach out to her, and perhaps she's not aware of the fact that you can homestead.
I don't know. I can tell you that there are issues with that property. I've seen it. I think there was a prior foreclosure against it, so I'll need to research that property. I can inform you offline, like a little bit more about that property.
Okay,
There are issues there.
thank you. I'm just wondering if, like the CBO would be willing to try to, through its Helping Hands project, would be willing to perhaps try to reach out to her to suggest that she might want to homestead it. It's an easy process to go through.
You do some research on these properties and come back to us at the next meeting?
Yeah, I don't know if we'll have it for the very next meeting, but
Okay,
we'll be
but-
working with Rich to try to
Okay.
get this together.
I'm getting tired of seeing this stuff and keeping us behind the eight ball all the time, and I like to see some of this resolved and get these properties either sold or taken, whatever it is, so we can get them back on the assessment roll and on the tax roll and start getting some money from them, because we're not getting nothing right now, so I just want to see something happen there. So the motion did pass 4-1, so, okay, thank you very much. The next thing, the next thing is a community manager's report. That was fast.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Special thanks goes out to Whitney Hodges for her updates and for her efforts in updating the bulletin boards on Building C. Website update rollout is continuing, scheduled launch next month. Assessment update, 92.8% has been received as of March 1st. ARC meetings on the 30th, there were 14 consent approved, 17 non-consent, 16 which were approved and 1 denied. Next meeting is next Tuesday. Violations had 20 of the 24 came into compliance before the meeting. And then the next meeting is on the 24th. Interesting stat of April, 64 home sales with 97 new homeowners. So if you see somebody in music bingo, they might be a new homeowner.
Right.
Food and beverage, Mother's Day brunch is coming up really soon. Memorial Day Street Dance will be on the 27th with the Hatley Band, and Father's Day clam bake tickets go on sale Monday. We did receive our permit from Brevard County for Independence Week fireworks this year on June 30th after a street dance. A lot of things happening on the golf course. They're working on aerification, so grass will not be cut for a while. Let it heal. Property Services, Mr. Getz and his crew have been busy as usual. I won't read all those to bore you. Update, the facility assessment report. Mr. Getz and I spent 90-plus minutes on a conference call helping them to do a little formatting and tweaking. We should have that to the trustees within the next week or so. They are in the process of importing the data and setting up the capital forecasting side of that project. And with now having lost a building under trustee Chairman Klosky's watch, as was referenced Tuesday night, we're going to try to find some things to replace it. The next steps for everybody's information will be regrading of the site, new fill, irrigation, a sidewalk, some landscaping, and that'll take place over the next couple of months. And the last thing I'd like to point out is representatives of Brightline Virgin Trains USA. Yes, Mr. Branson of the UK now owns the Brightline system, have scheduled a courtesy meeting with Chairman Klosky and I on Monday to brief us on their construction activities that are planned to start this summer in our area.
That's on June 13th.
June 13th, yes. Time flies when you're having fun. Thank you for correcting me. And that completes my report.
Thank you. Any questions from Mr. Coffey? I know that we lost a building under my regime, but like I told somebody that we lost a ratty building, but we got a great building now, so everybody's stored in that building, and I'm glad that we finally got rid of that building, and it's a beautiful sight to see it gone. So thank you very much for everybody. Go ahead.
One quick correction. It's May 13th, Monday, at 2 p.m. in our building, Mr. Chairman. I had a
Not
typo
June?
there. Not
May
June.
13th?
May.
Oh, okay, that's next week. Okay.
Are we going to be able to get to submit questions for you to ask on our behalf, or?
Yes, whatever you want, yes.
Mr. Chairman, are you going to be able to negotiate discounted fares for us?
Let's not push buttons too fast. Okay,
Joe,
yes.
I'll be dropping off a box of H's at your house right before the meeting.
H's, okay.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, I did have a couple speeches, and I watched my H's. So, but you know, I can never get back to the teacher always gave me a bad grade on that because she says you don't know how to talk right. So, okay, Mr. Rebinger, I'll let you talk.
Thank you, Mr. Klosky. The two big ticket items. The Building C exterior rehabilitation contract, we have worked out the terms of that with the contractor. We finalized everything. The award is exactly as the board awarded it. It's just a legal ease in the contract that we worked out. So I have forwarded that. Typically, we haven't always brought those contracts back, so I have sent that to the contractor to expedite the execution of that agreement. We can put that on for the next meeting for ratification with Mr. Klosky signing it just to move it forward. So it is as approved. It's just the legalese, and so we'll probably do that for the next meeting. The deadline for the application of the permits is June 1st, and I talked to the contractor this morning, and they plan to move forward to meet that deadline. So if you have any questions, let me know. The Blissful Things lease eviction. Give me 1 second because I'm pulling something up. So when we initially began this case, and I need to kind of give you a big picture of where this case is at right now. So when we initially filed the complaint in this case, the idea was, and there was, it was in December. There was at that time there was there were approximately $11,000 due of past due rent on the property. So when you file an eviction, there's two different things that you ask for in the complaint. One is the possession of the space, which is the most important thing, and two is the recovery of the amounts that are outstanding. At the time that we filed the suit, she was not out of the space, so it was critical to try to get her out of the space. And when she got served, she did vacate the space. So the biggest issue was getting her out, and she did leave the space. So where we're left right now is with the damage count that's left in the suit. My understanding, based on the numbers that I've gotten from Mr. Henley, is that right now, sitting here today, and now, again, when she left the space, it was like approximately $11,000. There's nobody there. I know that there's been an effort to try to relet, but there's nobody in the space. Right now, under the lease agreement, if you add up the rental amounts that were due and the late fees that would have accrued to this point, you're at $19,345 at this point. That amount of money has triggered us beyond. When we initially filed, we filed in circuit court. In county court, and the reason why we filed in county court was because we wanted her out as quick as we could get her out, and that was where we could get a hearing the quickest. So now that the damages are over $15,000, which is the jurisdictional limit of county court, we need to remove the case up to circuit court. So that's what we're doing. We're taking the case up. I'm filing a motion to move it to circuit court. The total amount of, and this is all subject to whatever the board's direction is, the total amount that's due right now, $19,345 is due sitting here right now. The remaining amount of rental for the remaining term of the lease is $20,539.50. It's a total amount. If you received all of the damages under the lease agreement, if you got a judgment for the total amount of the lease, past due and future rent that's going to accrue, it's $45,885. So I assume that the board wants to pursue that whole amount and that you want to remove it up to circuit court. There is a caveat, though, and that's the lease initially was signed with the individual, which is Jennifer Bliss. So she's the actual lessee. It's not a corporate entity. It's her as an individual. I suspect because she defaulted on the lease and wasn't paying the lease agreement that there's not a whole lot of assets there. So you could wind up with the judgment and wind up not being able to really collect all that much. In terms of your legal fee expenditures, I don't think it's going to be all that significant to get to a final judgment. The issue here is, though, and I am drafting a motion for summary judgment, she has filed an answer in the case saying that the space was unusable because of leaks and maintenance of the unit. Staff has contested that, but that's going to be an issue that she's probably going to raise when we move for summary judgment. So this could actually be a case that actually goes to trial to pursue her into for a final judgment. So I just want you to be aware of that. It's not something that through the ordinary course you'd resolve extremely quickly. In the grand scheme of case ages, the case is not all that old. So I expect to have the motion to remove to circuit court and the motion for summary judgment filed by the time that the board meets next. If she appears in the case, I don't know what she'll do with that, but it's 20 days from the date of that filing until we can get a hearing on it. So you're probably looking at about late June timeframe, early July timeframe by the time we have a hearing on the motion for summary judgment. So that's just to kind of give you a roundabout figure of when it could potentially be resolved. If the court denies summary judgment based on her assertions, then we could be looking at a trial date for later into the late summer, early fall, probably in the fall. So just keep that in mind. So that's where that case is at right now.
So is the board willing to have Mr. Revers continue what he said? I like to see it go forward.
Do we have a personal guarantee on that? Do you know, Cliff? We
do. That's why you can pursue her individually, because the lease, she didn't have a corporate entity. It really, I think she signed the lease initially as an individual, so she is the party of interest.
Okay, thank
so
you.
She's the one we're pursuing.
I would have no problem with allowing Cliff to proceed.
Randy?
Yeah, I mean, that's business.
Mr. Revers, you go right ahead and do it.
And just for everybody's edification, the home she lives in the Bay is not homesteaded.
Remember, you did bring up a thing there. You say we do need to have an agenda item to sign Building A lease, and that I don't believe it has to because it will delay the project and is not required by our policy manual.
Can you restate the first part of what you just said?
We do not need to have an agenda item to sign the Building A lease.
Is that you're reading from the minutes? I'm not. Are you asking me whether that's what I said, or
not required by the policy manual?
I don't recall exactly what you're referring to in terms of when that was discussed. So I don't remember that discussion.
I think Chairman Klosky, based on previous discussions, is referencing that there's not a requirement to wait till the 28th to authorize his signature on that.
On Building A, you're talking about on Building C.
Building C.
Oh,
Okay,
correct.
Building
That's
C.
correct. No. I think that we've already authorized it. I think the chairman can sign it. We'll just bring it back just for your information.
Oh, okay.
It's all
I
legalese.
made a mistake. Building
Yeah.
C. I'm sorry.
Now I understand. Sorry.
Okay.
Wrong building.
Anything else?
That's it.
That's it. Okay. Incidental remarks, Randy.
I have nothing.
Oh wow. Steve.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just going to say that I'm glad you lost the building.
Let's put it this way, didn't lose it, we got rid of it because we had a beautiful building built right behind it. And just to see that beautiful building, we had to take it down. And plus, I did find $1 in the sand.
Did we bring the backhoe in looking to scrape the ground? The other thing that it distresses me a little bit, and it should distress each one of the trustees here. We had a resident of the Bay who was escorted off of a club facility and has been attempting to converse with our attorney, and was told that we have nothing to do with individual clubs. It's not a Board of Trustee matter, and this individual continues to correspond with us. Our inboxes are flooded, and he has resorted to making threats against our attorney, against board members, and against staff. And I don't know how much more apparent we can make it to this individual that a club is not ruled by the district board of trustees. It's like me going to the Polish club and not being satisfied with my Golumki, and then complaining about it and coming up here and talking to this board about it. I don't know what we can do other than express our displeasure over the way that this has been going, but when some resident resorts to threats, it saddens me a little bit that we have to listen to that. We have nothing to do with it as a board, and it's something that we shouldn't have to deal with. To that end, I would like to ask our attorney if he could research how much time he has spent and how many dollars we have invested in trying to tell this individual that this is not a Board of Trustee matter. And then perhaps at a future meeting, this board should look at taking an action to bill this individual for our attorney's time. And if this individual doesn't pay, lien the house. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All I could say is I don't know how much the total time is. I haven't spent all that terribly much time on it, to be honest with you. There may be a little bit of communication that I had, but I've had a lot of communication for him that I really haven't billed you because it's just not worth doing it. He's a persistent individual. The initial inquiry was worth responding to, just to be able to assure him, and just for the record sake, whatever it was worth, that the district wasn't involved in the issue. And so there was a little bit of communication with him on that issue. After I kind of did what I did in terms of explaining, after I tried to explain to him what the situation was and felt like we had reached a ending point of that discussion, I really kind of ceased most of the communication to the extent that I could. I know that he's had a barrage of emails to everyone, not just us, it's the sheriff and a lot of other folks, but state legislators and and perhaps even the White House received an email, I'm not sure. But other than just ignoring it from this point forward, I'm not sure that there's a whole lot more that you can
Well, I
really
know
do
that you
about
did send him a lengthy letter yesterday explaining it to him and everything, and not to respond to your office or anybody else. So maybe you might take some advice, because I didn't see nothing, him sending you back anything today. So
No, he's not here today, so I kind of expected to have a dialogue with him today, but he's not here today.
so maybe you got through to him.
But
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Luann.
I just want to say I'm glad that green building is finally out of there, and that's really all I have to say.
Mr. Whedon.
told me to stay out of your way, so I did. I keep looking down so I can stay out of your way.
Oh, okay. Well, you gotta look up higher. I know I'm shorter than you are. Okay, I don't have, the only thing I have now, and it's this time of the year, I should have been doing earlier, but I gave the new board trustees about 4 months to get used to Mr. Coffey and Repinger and SDS, and now you all got a packet from me with a cover letter on it explaining one is evaluation for SDS Managing Company and the community manager, and I'd like to see, and also the other one is for Attorney Repinger, and I'd like to see all three of them getting back to Dawn Myers not later than June 10th, because I won't be here for that week to help her with to evaluate everything, and she has to have some time to evaluate and get it placed on the next agenda, and so it will be on June the 14th agenda, the evaluation report. So please study it, review it, and give him a rating the way what you think he deserves, and give it to Don no later than the 10th of June, because if we don't receive it by then, what we can do is anybody that don't hand it, we'll just give them the evaluation as a 5 and whatever you want it done. So please review it and hand it to Dawn. Thank you. That's all I have.
Joe, can we get those electronically so that we can do them on the computer? Okay, thanks, John.
Okay, no problem. The only thing else I want to wish is a happy Mother's Day to all the mothers of Barefoot Bay. I caught myself. And that's all for me. I need a
Request we adjourn.
yes. A second. Meeting adjourned. Have a good afternoon.
There you go.